Caleb Williams won the battle against Justin Fields, but now he has to beat the final boss of Tyson Bagent. I think Williams has a chance, though, as he was the number 1 overall pick and was my best player in the draft as well. Williams has great athleticism and awesome arm talent, and he can improvise as well as anyone coming out of college, so he has a chance to be really, really good, because as we become more aware of offense being dominated by deep threat abilities, he is going to look for those continually, and he gives his team a chance because he has great improvisational skills that you just can't teach. So Williams has a chance to be spectacular. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Stroud was his rookie year, because that's just so rare to see. Stroud was one of the 3 best rookie years of any quarterback in history, in my opinion. And Williams has a chance to be fantastic as a rookie, but I don't want to say that he's going to be one of the 3 best also. At backup quarterback, Tyson Bagent isn't actually going to compete with Williams, if that wasn't clear, but Bagent can be a solid backup. He wasn't a disaster in the snaps he got. He wasn't good either, but he could run around pretty effectively, which is surprising because he's not the most athletic guy. But in his limited sample size, he was alright. And if Williams goes down, which you would obviously hate to see, Bagent could right the ship for a game or 2. As we move to the supporting cast, if you're enjoying this video, make sure you give it a like, and also subscribe, as both make massive differences. With that out of the way though, the O-line for Chicago wasn't very good last year. I usually use ESPN's pass block and run block win rates, but they had Chicago as a top 5 unit in both areas, and that simply doesn't match what I saw at all. So I'm instead using PFF's pass blocking and run blocking grades. There, they were 23rd in pass block grade and 24th in run block grade, which matches a lot better with what I saw, and also what I heard from people that watched the Bears throughout the year also. So I think this is a better gauge as to what they actually were. Compared to last year, though, they should be improved, as arguably their best offensive lineman, Tevin Jenkins, missed time, as did Braxton Jones and Nate Davis. Additionally, Darnell Wright gets another year of development under his belt, and the unit gets to build chemistry as 4 of 5 starters return, which is massive for the offensive line because so much of it is just knowing how each player is going to react in the unit. Oh, and did I mention that they got rid of their worst offensive lineman in Lucas Patrick for Ryan Bates, who's a very solid player? So that's a big addition, that you're willing to sacrifice one of your 5 starters for chemistry's sake if you're going to get in a lot more talent, and I think there is a clear upgrade at the center position as a result of this change. Their depth is pretty darn good, as Kieran Amagaji, I believe is how you say that. I might be totally butchering that though, was drafted in the 3rd to be an option at tackle. He was expected to go higher in the draft, but has a quad injury that's prevented him from playing. If he's average for a 3rd rounder though, he'll be a solid contributor, as since 2019, the average rookie 3rd round tackle has a 60 PFF grade, which would be good for 62 out of 89 tackles, which is very solid for a backup tackle. Speaking of backups though, Coleman Shelton is an average starting center when healthy, so he's a premier backup option on the interior. He's going to compete for the starting position, so if he doesn't get it, he's going to be a good backup, and if Coleman does get the job, Bates is going to be a solid option as a backup center. Lastly, for their other tackle, Larry Borum was really rough last year, but he has the upside as a backup, as he was once a low-end starting caliber tackle, so they have options everywhere. shifting to the weapons, this is where things really get fun because they are among the absolute best in the league. I would say their trio of receivers, or if you want to be holistic and say their weapons as a whole, are at a minimum top 5. Because you have San Francisco, if they keep Ayuk, Miami, and then Houston. So at a minimum, they're actually the 4th best in my opinion. And that's amazing because in years past, they haven't been anywhere near that. Things start and also kind of end with DJ Moore, though, because he is elite as a number 1 wide receiver, being 11th in yards per game and 26th in yards per reception. Moore is fantastic at all 3 levels of the field. He can win deep, but as evident by him being 11th in yards per game, he can also consistently win in the short to intermediate parts of the field also. And speaking of winning in the short to intermediate part of the field, Keenan Allen is a top 3 number 2, as he was 4th in yards per game, so even better than DJ Moore. But what separates them most is that Allen was 56th in yards per reception, which speaks to him being more of that short to intermediate guy than Moore, who can win deep downfield with more proficiency. That isn't to say Allen can't win downfield, but you're just not really going to expect that out of him. Rome Odunze is going to be the wild card for them because I'm projecting great things for him. He was a top 10 talent, and he was drafted 9th overall. He was my 5th best player in this draft. Since 2019, rookie wide receivers drafted in the first average a 73 PFF grade, which would be good for 39 out of 102 wide receivers. So if he is average for a first-round wide receiver, he's going to be really good, and is going to be a premier 3rd option in this offense. But Odunze has the potential to be even better than that because he's better than the average first-round pick at wide receiver. Like I said, he was my 5th best player in this draft, and this was a pretty darn good draft. Odunze was drafted and thought of highly, so that's a great mix. Moving to tight end, Cole Kmet is a very good tight end too, being 11th in yards per game among tight ends and 21st in yards per reception among tight ends. He's also pretty proficient as a run blocker, which is nice because that adds some value. Kmet is, I'd say, pretty steadily in that 3rd tier of tight end, where in the 1st tier you have Kittle and Kelsey. Then maybe in the 2nd tier you have Hawkinson and Andrews and maybe Njoku. Then you get to Kmet as the 3rd tier of guy, where they aren't quite elite, but you definitely want them on your team as a solid contributor. Someone you might not want on your team, though, is DeAndre Swift. He is the weakness of this weapons group. He was 45th out of 59 halfbacks in PFF grade. But if you're going to be weak anywhere, running back is definitely the place to be weak at. Depth-wise, Gerald Everett could start for several teams at tight end, so he is an elite tight end too. Khalil Herbert is maybe the best running back 2 in the league too, so they aren't just top-heavy, they're deep. I would actually say that he's in the top 3 because, come to think of it, I would take Gibbs probably over Herbert, and I would also take Devon Achane over Herbert. Either way, though, Herbert is a really good running back 2, and I think should be their running back 1. But they gave Swift a good amount of money, so I think that Swift is going to be their starter, if for nothing else than that reason. At cornerback, the Bears are up and down with the potential to be absolutely great. Jalen Johnson ranked 1st out of 127 corners in PFF grade. This good of a year was unexpected, as his next best year in 3 other years was ranking 50th out of 116. but he's an ultra-talented corner nonetheless. He has prototypical height at 6 foot, is athletic enough, and is incredibly refined for still being a young player. To top it all off, he's a good run defender too, which isn't major, but is nice as an attribute. It's obviously better to be good as a run defender as opposed to being poor at it. So Johnson is elite and will hopefully be able to repeat his year. It's so difficult to be good in back-to-back years for defensive backs because schemes change and receivers defended change as well. So it's very difficult to be good in back-to-back years for a defensive back. But when you're the first graded cornerback, you have the potential to be great in every year, basically. Tyreek Stevenson was graded 80th out of 127 by PFF, so he had an alright rookie year. Young cornerbacks usually struggle, and Stevenson definitely did, but he also had flashes of being a good player. Like Johnson, he's 6 foot and is even better of an athlete, as Stevenson ran a good 4.45 40-yard dash, which is really solid, especially for being a slightly bigger cornerback. And at nickel, Kyler Gordon was ranked 57th out of all cornerbacks. Because the Bears refuse to have any variety, he's also 6 foot, so that's 3 6-foot tall players on the corners, and he has a good tendency of using that to his advantage, as he is very competent at jamming smaller receivers to slow them down. Gordon overall is a very solid cover guy in general, as evident by him being ranked 57th. That's a good ranking. It may not seem like it because you're thinking, geez, there's over 50 guys better than him. That's not great, but if you have 3 corners that are in the 50s, you're going to actually have a pretty good defensive back unit. At safety, they are very well set. Kevin Byard ranked 23rd out of 95 safeties in PFF grade. He's one of the most versatile safeties in the league, as he logged 230 plus snaps in the box, at nickel, and at free safety. He's altered his game some with time, as he's now a premier run defender, but is also still very good in coverage. So he is a great player to have. So too is Jaquan Brisker, who was rated 48th out of all safeties according to PFF. He's versatile like Byard, having played 315 or more snaps at free safety and in the box, and 114 in the slot too. Also like Byard, he does his best work against the run, but is more than good enough of a coverage guy as well. Regarding the defensive back depth, Terrell Smith is a great corner option. He's super athletic. Get this, he's 6 foot tall, and is capable of an athlete, as he ran a 4.41 40. He's great against the run and solid against the pass too. Lastly, Mr. Simone Biles, Jonathan Owens, is a capable backup too at safety, so they have good options everywhere. On the defensive line, Chicago is alright. Montez Sweat finished 18th out of 122 in edge pressures. He's a good edge setter in the run game as well, so he's a very nice player in all, and helped transform the defense of the Bears in the second half of the season after his acquisition. He is, I think, a little bit underrated, because even though people do realize that he was instrumental in changing how well the Bears performed, I don't think if you listed the elite edges in the NFL, he would come up too often, and he's certainly in that conversation. Things fall off pretty dramatically, as DeMarcus Walker finished 41st in edge pressures, which seems really good, but he's not somebody that's too easy to get excited about. He was benefiting from coverage sacks a lot and coverage pressures. He wasn't getting in very quickly, so he wasn't really that great of a pass rusher, even though being 41st in pressures would suggest that you're really good. And moreover, he's not great as a run defender either, which is really disappointing because he's 280 pounds, which is pretty big for an edge. So they do have a solid edge rushing duo, but Walker is kind of holding it back and could be upgraded upon. On the interior, Andrew Billings was 45th out of 142 in defensive interior pressures. He's also alright as a run defender, so he has a ton of value. He's one of the better defensive tackles in the league. He's not elite, but he's very solid. Gervin Dexter is a weakness at defensive tackle too, being 105th for defensive interior pressures. He also is very poor against the run, so that's an issue as well. So they do have an issue at defensive tackle too, and they might have one at edge rusher too, so that's not great. As for their depth on the defensive line, Zach Pickens is an alright third defensive tackle. He struggles against the run though, like Dexter does, so they need help in that regard. But overall, they don't have a bad defensive line. It's just not a special one either. To round their roster out, the linebacker core for the Bears should be a strength, but is a bit of a question mark at the moment. TJ Edwards ranked 11th out of 82 linebackers in PFF grade. He's as balanced as they come, ranking top 20 in run defense, pass rushing, and coverage, so he has no deficiencies in his game. He is a very good linebacker. And somebody that has the potential to be very good, even better than Edwards, is Tremaine Edmonds. He was 70th in PFF grade. As you can imagine with a rank like that, he struggled, but he was particularly rough in run defense, as he was okay in coverage, using his great athletic abilities to match receivers. But it was definitely disappointing to see Edmonds play like he did, because in Chicago last year he was a top 10 linebacker, and you kind of expected that to continue because he was on a solid developmental track. He was kind of struggling for a while and then became the 5th ranked linebacker in 2022, so it seemed like he maybe figured things out, but he did not, as evident by him struggling as much as he did this season. Hopefully he can turn things around. Matt Eberflus has done great things with linebackers in the past, such as with Shaq Leonard, and Edmonds is a more athletic Leonard, so maybe Edmonds can have great results like Leonard has had. The depth at linebacker is very good, as Jack Sanborn is one of the best linebacker threes in the league. He's good against the run and is solid in coverage too. So if anybody goes down at linebacker, they have a good replacement option. And if they want to go into a base defense, quote unquote, nickel is now the base defense. But if they want to go into a more conventional 4-3 look, they have 3 linebackers that are capable of playing at the same time. In all, Chicago is an incomplete team. Caleb Williams is a very promising quarterback that's capable of someday being an elite playmaker, perhaps as soon as this year. Their offensive line isn't good, but it's good enough. Their weapons are super talented and can stack up with anyone's, as DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and arguably Rome Odunze as well are all capable of being number 1 receivers. And Cole Kmet is a solid tight end. Defensively, though, that's where the holes reveal themselves. Their cornerback, too, is a question mark, and that's an area you don't want to have any uncertainty with. Their defensive line is strong at edge 1 with Montez Sweat being great. Then it's all downhill from there, with Andrew Billings being the only other saving grace. Linebacker-wise, they have 2 studs, and Edmonds can be as good as anyone when he's at his best. The Bears are super promising, but might be a year away. Those are my thoughts on the Bears. Be sure to let me know what yours are in the comment section, and also be sure to like and subscribe for more NFL content.